What surprised you about the entrepreneurship experience so far?
I think what surprised me was how I would deal with problems, because sometimes I run into problems at work and I'm just like whatever. But I run into problems in my own business. You can't do that. You have to be like, okay, how do I solve this? What are the steps I need to take to make this correct?
Xavier DeArco, a talent acquisition specialist with the U.S. Navy, focuses on sourcing candidates committed to advancing the nation's security and maritime freedom. By leveraging strategic planning and effective communication, he ensures alignment with the Navy's mission. In parallel with his military role, Xavier manages his own woodworking business, where he sharpens skills in marketing, customer satisfaction, and profit analysis. What made you want to pivot into entrepreneurship?
So growing up, I always had, I feel like anytime I worked somewhere, it seemed like I never really fit in, if that makes sense. Like I always would want to solve problems, maybe from a different angle. Especially now in my current role, I'm a recruiter. So sometimes our views don't match up because they want stuff done a certain way. But as an entrepreneur, we're always trying to make things better using like data or what better market to be in and the one you're in every day, learning and overcoming the challenges that you see. So I wrote out goals when I first joined. I was like, okay, I want to, get my degree. I want to start a business. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I started watching a lot of YouTube videos, like a lot of people do, learning that, hey, this is actually possible. There are people out there that do it. And just from that, I was like, okay, I want to do this. How do I do it? So I would read books and I would kind of start putting myself into situations like, what do I like to do? And the whole flipping thing and then the table thing turned into a business and just flip. I mean, I actually flipped couches for a while too in Virginia Beach. We were making a couple extra $1,000 a month flipping couches. Like we'd buy couches, clean them up. Sometimes we'd even give them for free. People were just like, hey, I want to get rid of this. Make sure they're, don't have any bed bugs or anything like that. Bring them home, wash the linens and everything, stage it right. We'd sell it, free delivery. That was like the kicker because I have a truck. And people were buying it $200, $300, $400 we were making off these couches. And I was like, holy crap. Like, if I can do this, what else can I do? So it's fun too, like making a game out of it. Like, how far can this go? And it's fun just doing it yourself. I feel like we're all creators in our own way. And I just like to create and, find a way to make money. It's fun.
Yeah. It sounded like you kind of fell into it. Now that you're in it, what are your goals?
So my goals now, I started on X about just over 2 months ago, April 6th, I think. I always wanted to create content, but I didn't want to do video yet. So I've watched a couple people and they started talking about writing, which I feel like I like to read, and just reading through that and writing out my thoughts and ideas. I have like a journal that I do. And I was like, how about I just start doing it and putting it out there for everybody to see. So I want to help others with the problems I had, like starting a small business or financial issues. Some people like myself, I never knew how to get into the small business world or how to, use my finances. That way I could set up my life and have like a inheritance for my children's children. So I just want to impact everybody and help people with their issues, starting businesses and then with finance. So that's kind of my goals on X. And I also want to do like brick and mortar, like buy businesses that people are selling, because I feel that way you're not starting from scratch. You can just walk in somewhere. Hey, what can I do better that they weren't doing? Or whatever the case, and then expand on that.
Yeah, it sounds really great. Are you thinking like regional, like South Eastern US or nationwide, or what are you thinking in terms of the brick and mortar business acquisitions?
So right now we're looking at there's actually this downtown movie theater where we live. It's a very historical, like old building. My wife actually spent a lot of her
Old Town Pensacola?
not Pensacola, but it's in a town called Fort Walton Beach. It's in between Destin and Pensacola. But it's just the older movie theater. We're looking into buying it, and it would just kind of have a good place in our heart because we grew up going there. She spent a lot of her life there actually. Like her dad worked there for a while, had partial ownership back in the day. So we're looking into buying that and kind of moving in there and making it a little bit better with marketing and advertising. So we're just trying to work out the deal, and then as long as that goes good, that'll be like my first business I buy.
That sounds really cool. Buy a movie theater?
Yeah. So.
And then you just show like whatever you want, play Mario Kart on the big screen there.
Exactly. So you could do all kinds of things, right? And it's one of those movie theaters where it's just one, you walk in, you sit at the table, the server comes out to you, hey, what are you drinking? Soda, whatever. What do you want to eat? They serve pizzas, boiled peanuts, popcorn, all that stuff. Family friendly. So they're only open in the evening. So you're only gonna have like 1 or 2 showings, and then that's it.
That seems really cool. So yeah, basically start with the movie theater and then go from there. See what the next business is, maybe like a restaurant or something like an apartment building or something like that.
Yep. I mean, I love real estate. So my first house, the one we bought in Virginia, we fixed it up a whole bunch, did a whole lot of renovation on it, like redid the kitchens, the doors, the flooring, the bathrooms, and we were there for 2 years before we sold it. Of course, COVID, everything went down, and then like the housing market went crazy. So we sold it, and we made a profit around $36,000, which was nice. We sold it at 22, and then I knew I was coming into this recruiter gig back home, so we were looking for a house back home, and I bought the house that I'm in now. It is on 7 acres, a new build. So I got a whole bunch of land. I got a pond, shooting range, workshop to do all my stuff, and ride 4-wheelers, all that fun stuff I get to do on my own land. So that's very fun. And the house has already gone up like $100,000 in value. So we're looking for real estate deals, we're looking for business deals, and we're just looking for deals. Like if we can find a deal on a couch, we can find a deal on a house or a business. You know what I mean? And just flip it and make.
That's the quote from the episode.
Just looking for deals.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. You're doing something right. Yeah, 7-acre property. Sounds pretty cool. So what surprised you about the entrepreneurship experience so far?
I think what surprised me was how I would deal with problems, because sometimes I run into problems at work and I'm just like whatever. But I run into problems in my own business. You can't do that. You have to be like, okay, how do I solve this? And what are the steps I need to take to make this correct? Like if somebody bought a table from us and, for example, we've had a few tables out of the hundreds we sold that some of the joinery started cracking, and my wife would freak out. Oh my gosh, this table, this and that, they're upset. I'm like, no, they're not upset. Don't put your own beliefs on somebody else. That's what I've also learned about how they're going to feel. So, I would contact them, find out what's going on, fix the problem, happy customer, right? So I think just my ability to kind of think through the problem instead of just being like, it is what it is, like there's nothing I can do, which I would do a lot of times throughout my work, throughout my early 20s. Now I'm turning 26 soon, so I've learned a lot just through the lessons and failures, and the small business has helped a lot with that in my own personal and professional life. So it's been great.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship really helps develop you personally and professionally, because it's one and the same. And like you said, you have to face those problems and figure out solutions to them. So how are you educating yourself with entrepreneurship, with your industry? Are you like watching some go-to YouTube channels or reading some books that you recommend?
Yeah, so I love reading, and I don't remember where the quote's from. It's not mine, but they said like pretty much the layman's terms, like if you want a cheat code to entrepreneurship or business, just read books, read biographies really of like super successful people like Warren Buffett. I like Alex Hormozy, he's got a lot of good books. I actually got this book right here. I'm still reading it, $100 Million Leads. That is the best way I think to learn, is just reading and then going into the market and figuring it out. because that's the best teacher at the end of the day, just doing it 100, 1,000 times and then finding out kind of your own SOP to like, okay, what are the common occurring obstacles? What are the common occurring objections? And kind of writing out like, how do I overcome this? And you already know whenever you hear it, okay, this is what I need to say and understand where they're coming from to solve their issue. So reading is fun. I love podcasts. I walk a lot. I walk in the morning. I got 2 huskies, so they're very energetic. So I have to walk them, and I walk a lot with them. So I'll be late, listening to podcasts. If I'm at work, just cramming in, jobbing, doing paperwork, I'm listening to the podcast. So at any point of the day, I'm trying to get some kind of golden nugget from a podcast or a book. I might listen to the same video like 2 or 3 times because I heard something good and I was like, okay, let me listen to it again. I might hear something else good. So I love just learning. I'm just a very curious person because I just like to learn. Like there's so much out there, so much information, and we just have it in the palm of our hands. So might as well just keep learning and keep trying to be better, because my whole quote is like, you're never finished. So just keep learning and keep growing and becoming the person you want to be in 10 years. Like just chase that person, not really the destination. Like I want to just live my life as like the journey and have, destinations along the way, like little, I'm going to stop in Dubai for a bit and then come back home. But yeah, that's kind of my go-to for education, just books, podcasts.
That sounds good. As long as it sounds like you are, like doing something. I think if you just read in a vacuum, it doesn't really, you need something to, somewhere to plant the seed. A lot of learning, I think, comes from action. But if you, don't read and don't have any, like information to begin with, you can kind of be aimless in that action too. So you need to find that balance, I think. Sounds like you found it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Now your work right now anyway seems to be like you have to kind of be present for it. It sounds like it might be difficult to do that remotely. Is that something you're thinking about in the future, transitioning to a location independent like infrastructure or system?
Do you mean as in like what I'm doing like for the Navy? Is that what you mean?
Oh, sorry. I meant for the your entrepreneurship kind of endeavors. You're talking about buying some businesses, flipping, like building some furniture or flipping stuff. So I was just curious, do you plan to kind of stay planted and just travel in holiday time, or do you want to kind of become a little bit more location independent? Because that seems to be kind of a desire of a lot of the entrepreneurs I speak to these days.
Yeah, so I do like the idea of like having brick and mortar because I feel like it's important to keep those things going. I don't know how far AI is going to go. I don't know if it's going to take over like everything, right? Like I don't know if they're going to have robots doing electrical in the house or plumbing or whatever like that. So I'm pretty open to opportunity. Like I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. I just want to make an impact as best I can with whatever I see fit. I don't think I'm really a career guy. Like I don't want to be doing this my whole life. Like one thing, like say I buy the movie theater, I don't want to be like, all right, that's it. I'm done. I want to just every few years kind of like, okay, let's say I mastered the movie theater. Now I want to move on to something else, kind of like, I feel like we mastered the woodworking business. It was kind of like our introduction to entrepreneurship, and we've learned a lot of the tools that we can take on to like the next level. So I guess just keep rising in those levels and just putting my faith in God and seeing where it goes.
Yeah, seems to have led you well so far. Regarding the military, do you plan to like retire from the military and just do this full time, or you will still have kind of a foot in that world as well?
So I'm actually separating in about 9 months. I think it's gotten kind of laid the foundation for what my life is currently. So it's been great. It's been fun. But now I kind of want to, like, if I see an opportunity while I'm in the military, I can't just bounce on it because I'm bound to a contract. I can't leave. So I kind of want to get out of that role and just be able to, pounce on something right then and there instead of, hey, there's nothing I can do because I have to be at work tomorrow at 9 and I'm not going to get off till I don't know when. because that's kind of how it works. So yeah, I'm separating for that reason. I think I've just hit my peak of potential in the military, and I want to break through that wall and then hit the next peak.
How do you think going into the military has helped you? I guess both personally and professionally.
I think it's helped me in like every single aspect of my life. I've found the ability to one, to have discipline, which I think is important. You know, motivation comes and goes, but you want to become disciplined where you're doing the things that are moving towards your ultimate goals and achievements. So one, discipline. Two, accountability, having extreme ownership over your life. Like no matter what your circumstances are, no matter what kind of bias the world has against you, just taking all of that and owning it, be like, okay, that's what it is. What do I have to do to get through that challenge, those obstacles and everything, and just taking ownership over everything. And then three, leadership, just being able to be around team members in a team environment and being able to lead those people to complete a common task, whether they wanted to, didn't understand the why, or, you know, whatever was bothering them that day to get them through and complete those tasks.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Gives you a lot of tools or good skills to develop, and it seems like one of those things that never goes away. I don't know if it's the impact or the duration, but most people that I know that have like left military life, retired or whatever, they still kind of maintain certain things that you can kind of tell, like, oh, they're in the military. Like they're always punctual. I remember I went surfing with my buddy's dad. I think he was in the Air Force, and he used to always like fold his socks like on the beach. He'd always like fold his socks and everything was like neat. And it's like my friend was like, dude, it's the beach. Like, you know, you just like doesn't matter. Like there's no boundaries or whatever. But it was interesting just to see that order. Like wherever he went, he was always on time. He always had this order about him. So yeah, that discipline, focus, accountability, probably good skills to have. Seems to be working well for you so far.
Somewhat. I definitely have my flaws. I just try to stay in humility. I think that's like the most important trait to have. Knowing that you don't know everything. You can always learn something from somebody. And just, treat people how you want to be treated.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think two things. Like as I've got older, I feel dumber. I never felt like smarter than when I was like 20 years old. And I basically, like, everyone seems like super smart because I notice people that like I look up to, they treat people with respect. It's not like they look at like the rankings or whatever, like I have whatever, therefore I don't have to listen to you. Generally, I find that they're more humble and really good listeners. And I think that they've learned, and I think I've learned, you can really learn from anyone, absolutely anyone, kids even. I recommend people get a mentee as well as a mentor or two, because just that whole like ecosystem of like when you teach someone, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an age thing, but if you have like a mentee, forces you to kind of look at things in a different lens and a different perspective. And you mentioned how you like rewatch podcasts or reread books and you get different things out of it each time. It's similar function to that, where you've lived it, but you didn't quite analyze it that way. And now you're kind of unpackaging it and you get this whole different take on it as you're, I don't know, sharing it with your mentee, let's say. And then they'll ask a question or they'll share something from their professional career or whatever. And it, once again, it's like another impact point where it forces you to look at that in yet another light. And so we're kind of unearthing seeds of thought in us that are kind of dormant, and like you have knowledge in you right now that you can't get to until like me or your wife or your colleague or someone else says something that unlocks that. And so that's why I think it's really important. That's why I do what I do and try to talk to like everyone everywhere. And it just unearths like so many different types of thoughts and ideas, and it's fun. And there's no limit, like you said earlier. I mean, it's just wherever you go, if you were to just stay in Florida and just like drill down, you still would never run out of things to learn or see or do. That was like tricky for me when I went to Japan. I thought I'd like, that was a launching pad. I'd like spend a year or two there and then go everywhere else I could. But once you start learning about a place, you realize like you could never leave if you wanted to. Like there's just so much, you're never like done. So that was humbling as well.
Yeah, those are great things that you said. And I think one of the big things that you said, the older I get, the dumber I feel. I feel that completely. Because I feel like when I was like 18, I was like, dude, I know everything. Like, who's this guy? And the older you get, you're like, wow, I know nothing. And like the more you know, or the more you learn, the more you know that you don't know anything, because there's so much information out there. There's so many people that have done like the world is, I mean, it's been around for forever, and like there's so much history. There's so many people that have done amazing things. So it's just incredible, especially this day and age that we can just really like, oh, what is that? Okay, let me do some research on it, and then, or what does this word mean? And then you can just instantly figure it out. So I love that.
Yeah, it's funny. Everything seems to come at a cost. I mean, like a trade-off, pros and cons or benefits, and the cost of that. With the words, like when I was growing up, we have to look up the words. We had like an Encyclopedia Britannica, like the whole volume, and so if it was in the encyclopedia, we'd have to look it up. So you have to like, okay, that's an M. Okay, flip through and then find it. Same with the dictionary, and the. I mean, it doesn't sound like that hard, but it's just annoying, right? Especially these days, if it's just type send or even speak, and it'll tell you. Um, the facility with which we get our answer, I think, diminishes the duration of the retention. It's like in and out. Because we just, it's like with AI, generative AI, you can write, a paper instantly. So the words have no meaning anymore. Before you have like, it was hard to write like 1,000 words. You had to like think and be creative and make some typos, make some mistakes, and now it's like, perfect. And so it kind of it in a way it things lose value because they're so easy. And so it's an interesting kind of space to occupy now, where yes, we have like the Library of Alexandria in our pocket, but we actually know less because you probably, I mean, maybe you remember your own phone number, but I used to remember everyone's phone number. Like growing up, I knew all my friends' phone numbers because you had to. And I was telling someone else this, when you forget this, but like when people left like home, you didn't know if they were alive or dead. Like that's a fact. And you just got that was normal. Like you just used to that. And you just assumed I'm going to see them at 5 o'clock or I'm going to see them at whatever time. And so if you were late, like the worry meter goes like up and up, like, cause it's like, there's no way to confirm. And meeting people like, hey, I'll meet you at the mall or whatever at this time. Like if you're not there, like it's not like you can like send a message, hey, I'm stuck in traffic or whatever. It's just like, so everything just operated differently, and your mapping of like meaning and everything was different too. So I mean, I like it. I'm not trying to like complain that I can look up stuff real quick, but it's I think it's good to be aware of the cost and try to maybe work in some kind of system. Like you mentioned reading and journaling. I think that's really good. Just kind of build that in to the system so you can appreciate when things are fast, but you can remember when things are slow at the same time. Because I think you need both, and it kind of changes the way that you create thoughts and stuff.
That is a good point. There is definitely a dichotomy there with having everything at the touch of your hands, literally, or the palm of your hands. So I feel like what you said, like back in the day, I remember too going to the dictionary through school to look up a certain word, and now like you don't have to do that. That's funny. I never really thought about it until now. Like, dang, yeah, we really did have to do that back in the day. Or how you said, yeah, I was talking about that with somebody the other day too. It's just funny when you would just go somewhere and like, what would you do if they didn't show up? You're just like, oh, okay, maybe they got killed in a car accident. I mean, that's, but
Yeah, that was the first guess, I guess, especially at like 16 or whatever. Yeah, it was, you never knew. But I mean, it sounds morbid, but it's like back then it was just, I don't know. It's all relative. Like if that's your world, you just don't do it. Like you show up on time, or you find a payphone or something like that. But yeah, it's like outside of those systems, it wasn't like now if someone doesn't message you in like 5 minutes, it's, I don't know. I should say this. I would change it actually. I would say because people can message you in 5 minutes, I think, I don't know, it's maybe culturally dependent, but it's like more acceptable to be like a fuzzy kind of start time or something like that, because it's like hey, we're still communicating. Like, it's like it's a fluid agreement. Whereas before it was like, no, like the plane is leaving at that time or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great point too. It's like something as simple as being late to something where you can just now, hey, I'm going to be late. Back then it was like the standard was to be on time. And you could probably go down like a whole rabbit hole of other things that affects now that we just have the ability to communicate like that, where things get delayed because of the communication and all the tools that we have now. Back in the day, it wasn't really acceptable.
It's a trade-off. There's pros and cons. I was talking about photography with someone a couple of days ago. I learned I was one of the last classes in my university to study the whole film process. And it was like, you were like a wizard. You were like a magician when you told your buddies that, like, you're a photographer, because not everyone had a camera. Not everyone, like, could process film, or, it was expensive. And so it was this cool thing like you could do that. It was like you had a craft. Like, it's like back in the medieval days, like you were the blacksmith. Like, people would come to you for photographs. And then the writing was on the wall when things go digital. I remember my first photo class, the professor asked, he's like, raise your hand if you want to know the secret to becoming a great photographer. And everyone raised their hand. He said, take a lot of pictures. Back then, that meant a lot of money and a lot of time, because you'd have to buy the film, buy the photoreceptive paper, buy the chemicals to process it, make some mistakes, let in some light and ruin your photos accidentally, go through the X machines at the airport and whatever, lose your film. There's like, you had to like really take care of these things, like your captures, as if they're babies. And you didn't know what was there. Like, you'd get really good at like the quick calculus of like shutter speed and aperture and timing and all that for how you kind of want the picture to go, depending on if you want motion blur or stopping fast action or whatever. But you didn't know, like, if someone's blinking, did someone enter the frame? Like, there's always surprises, these Easter eggs, if you will. So there's like, it was like, magic. And then when you look at the film finally on the light box, and you kind of choose which ones you want to print, because each print, like the photoreceptive paper, is at least like $1 or $2 each one. So you're not like just printing a whole. Very rarely would you ever print even most of the pictures you took in like a 24-36 exposure roll. And then you're in the darkroom, and it's like, that's where it's trippy, because I thought of photography as a visual medium, but most of it was done in like complete blindness and just memory and silence. And you're just like memorizing how many steps it is to your enlarger, because you don't want to like, trip or knock your face on something. And you remember like clicks of the aperture. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm at 5, 6 or 8 or whatever, and want it this height. So you start like thinking without your vision in a lot of ways. And it, of course, as you know it, when without one sense, you take one sense away, the others become more heightened. And then for like a flash, whatever your desired exposure of the enlarger was when you're printing the photo, let's say it's 30 seconds or 40, like you can control that depending on the aperture. And maybe you'd want a longer duration if you're dodging and burning, because our eyes have high dynamic range, which means we can see highlights and shadows at the same time, but film can't. So you have to do different exposures for each one, which is called the HDR images you might see, or you have to kind of, like with coat hangers, you would like this, coat hangers or cardboard, to come up, like make your own tools depending on like the picture, the problem. And like I remember one shot I had at the Guggenheim, that museum in New York that's like a spiral with, so it's like got the white-ish kind of outer parts and the shadows in between, and then the shadow of the alley and stuff. So I had a lot to kind of like equalize there. And so I'm like, okay, what kind of tool do I want for this? And then I need more time, because like I can't do it like super fast. So I like slow it down, like make the shutter speed on the enlarger, which is basically like a camera, super small. And so I have more, like it slows down the passage of light onto my photoreceptive paper. And that gives me more time to basically paint with light. And I'm like doing this thing, and then I kind of make it. But anyway, you're in the complete darkness. And then when that picture comes on, it's just like being at sea with the stars. It's like in your memory. It's not just your retina. It's like in your brain. And when the light cuts off, it's just like there. And you could almost like, I don't know, it feels like you're hearing vision or something, like you're seeing your sound, or it's in there. And it's so different. Like you wouldn't get that any other way, I think. However, to my photo professor's point, with, no barrier to entry, you can take 1,000 photos without any of that cost, and just and get really good at composition and experiment and stuff like that. So it's great, the facility, the ease with which we can take pictures, and you can see it right away. There's no surprises or less surprises. Back then, there's a huge surprise. If you went to Japan, my goodness, you didn't know. Like you didn't know what you got till you got back home. So your like whole trip's like done. You're back. You can send your film away to get processed if you're not processing it yourself. And then it's like the big reveal. I mean, it's almost like opening up a present. It's like, what did I get? So it's totally different. I mean, it's pros and cons. I'm not saying it's worse. It's just I think it's good to kind of be aware of what you're not having so that you can seek it out and kind of experience both to whatever degree you're able. And I really feel almost like left brain, right brain, that'll help you kind of, I don't know, experience more.
That is, so you think it's maybe like a dopamine kind of thing, like how we just have dopamine all the time? Maybe things are just less like you said, maybe it feels less euphoric, like when you took that photo and you went through all these different processes too, and now you can just do it, and it seems like it takes little to no effort.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I think that's I hadn't thought of it in like an evolutionary sense, but that kind of tracks, I believe. If you think of, it wasn't that long ago that we like a calorie deficit was a given. Like, you were lucky if you hit your calories for the day. Now it's like the opposite. Now it's like I'm lucky if I if I don't exceed my calories. So it's like that's a total shift, I think, probably ever. Like maybe if you were like Emperor of Rome or something, that'd be a problem. But other than that, it's like, so that was very different in terms of like your relationship with the highs you get from calories or whatever. And then I think similarly with reading, for example, you have to focus and you have to synthesize. It's like the words are there, but you get to say what the character looks like. They're telling you, but there's a lot of latitude with like the character looks like this or the scene looks like that. You've got a whole vision. And then when you see the TV series or the movie, sometimes it's like really good. It's like, oh yeah, that kind of tracks. That's a little bit different, but that's good enough. I'll go with that. Sometimes it exceeds your expectations, and sometimes it's obviously it diverges. But if that's your first point of entry, I think that takes a lot away. Just like we were talking about with looking up words, it's like, yes, it's right there right away. You can use it, but okay, let me try something real quick. So you ever watch the old samurai movies?
Yeah.
So they inspired the spaghetti westerns, actually. So like Fistful of Dollars, Magnificent Seven, those movies were actually inspired by Japanese samurai movies. Akira Kurosawa is the director that kind of started those. I don't know if you've seen those particular movies, but you've seen like samurai swordplay or fights in movies, and you've seen the westerns, like the shootouts. How do you feel? This isn't a trick question. I'm just curious. How do you feel watching the sword fights versus watching the gun fights?
I think the sword fights are it's like way more of like an art, like especially from like a martial arts standpoint, and just knowing kind of the background of all that. It just seems more like there's just so much more goes into it than just like shooting a gun,
Not to take anything away from marksmen, and there's a lot of skill involved there.
I'm like, as a gun guy myself, there's just like it takes a lot to know how to use a weapon, but I think there's just something special about like that sort of a way of combat.
Well, you're more. I've shot a couple of guns, but I wouldn't consider myself a gun guy. So you might know better than me, but I feel that you're more connected to like everything. Like, I'm sure posture and certain things all come into play. I don't want to take anything away from something I know little about, but I just, like you mentioned, the martial arts component, like you're there, you're in the action. With the gun, usually it's downrange. And yeah, there's probably a whole different kind of mapping there. But with the swords, I think the way I'm trying to use this analogy is I think it's more similar to being connected to the whole process of finding the word in the dictionary, where it's all connected. And because it was hard to get it, the dopamine reward basically sealed it into your ecosystem, into your microdome or whatever, where your biome, I mean, where it's part of your vocabulary. Whereas George Carlin, the comedian, he has some great liners, these critiques of society and stuff. But he said there's nothing to like make you feel like you're losing your memory than a power outage. I don't know if you heard that one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you keep thinking of like, oh, I'll just do this. It's like, oh, I can't do that because everything's connected to electricity. But it's similar. When you look up a word, you can use it. And when you write, when you read, you can use those words. When you're just like watching videos, when you're listening to audiobooks even, you get this illusory, it's almost like, I don't want to say it's empty calories, but you get this illusion of like Okay, probably not fair to say that, but you're not growing as much as if you actually sit down in silence and read the book. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, even I completely like even like reading on a phone, it's like not the same as reading like a paperback or a hardback book. Like you don't feel the same, at least for me, I don't feel the same connection. Like it doesn't really feel like I'm reading, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's an art. I mean, I think, maybe a marksman should also take up sword play, vice versa. And any podcast listener or watcher or whatever should also read books and write. I think it's all kind of connected, all part of the system, and helps you appreciate each more. I appreciate the ease with which I can take a digital photo now, and it's kind of nostalgic remembering how long it would take to get that in the film days. But I'm glad that I got to experience that, like the twilight of the analog era.
Yeah, that's really cool that you have that perspective because it's gonna be lost in 100 years. Like nobody's gonna know like that's
Who knows what's coming?
yeah. So I mean maybe even the phone will be like, what the heck is that? You know? So
I think it will be.
yeah. I don't I'm I don't know too much about AI. Like I try to read up on it, but honestly it's just crazy like how fast it's progressing.
I think a lot of the options are going to be made for us. And I mean, to some extent, I think we'll opt in. So like when we mentioned before about punctuality, I think it'll just be like things are going to have to work on time, but like all of that will be kind of taken care of for us. Like you will be on time. Like it'll make you on time. And maybe driving will be maybe we'll do it on like closed tracks for human drivers or whatever. But I mean, I don't know how far out we're getting here, but in terms of like transportation, it's probably just way more efficient to have people going like hyper speeds. Just
That is something I get on board with.
right? Because I mean, you could get what's a Hyperloop or something like that. I forget the speeds, but I think I forget what it is. Are they faster than a jet? Do you remember?
I'm not entirely sure.
Are they almost that fast? They're certainly faster than the bullet train, which is fast. But yeah, basically it makes travel easy. Like you could commute from Florida to New York or something like that. And then there's the whole question of teleportation.
That is even crazy to think about. I wonder how far all of this stuff is. Like, say you could go from Florida to New York, and instead of taking a plane or whatever, you could just be there within like 30 minutes. Like, hey, I want to go have dinner in, Manhattan tonight or whatever. And you could just be there like that night and then come back home the same night without it being like some like huge process. I don't know if that's even like an actual thing, but since we were talking about it.
So basically they're testing the Hyperloop, it looks like, and they're getting up to 288, almost 300 miles an hour. That's 463, almost 500 kilometers per hour. And Elon Musk's Hyperloop concept, they said, could reach 700. I mean, I don't know what the upper limit is. So yeah, that's fast. That's basically cruising speed of an aircraft. But on the ground, I mean, in a pneumatic tube, essentially. So that's nice. No, hopefully, like faster boarding and deboarding, ingress and egress than the airport. So that's the cool thing I like about train stations is you're in the city already. It's not like you have to figure out transportation into the city from the airport. You're there. So it's city center to city center usually.
Okay, so this Hyperloop thing, like, how does that work? Is it like just a big loop around, like, say, a country or like a state, and it's all connected?
So, do you remember like the old movies? I don't know, like what they set 20s or 30s or something. Like at banks and places, they had like a message. Like someone at the teller or whatever would like write down something. They put it in this little tube, close it, and then like shoot up to wherever, like the back office. So it's like a vacuum kind of suction thing, and there's no friction. So things can move like very fast. Like as you probably know, that's actually as we get fast enough, our own atmosphere becomes an obstacle. Like it heats up whatever we're in, and so that's kind of a speed limit to an extent. But if it's a vacuum, you remove a lot of that, the friction, obviously. So it's got like a very smooth like glide to it. And I don't know if it's going to use magnetic levitation or if it's just pure suction. And you have like point to point. So they probably have to work out some kind of like valve system to basically get people to point A before they, like if you're going, I don't know where you Pensacola to where'd you go? Like Fort Lauderdale or Miami or something like that. I don't know if it's going to be like straight or you have to like transfer. You know, they'll have to probably work that out. But starting out, it'd probably just be point to point. So you get on at the Hyperloop at like one main city and get off the Hyperloop at another main city. It'd be cool. I don't know though, because they're still like in developing it while like AI is kind of developing towards artificial general intelligence and then artificial super intelligence, which means it's smarter than all of us. And that's like when it passes the singularity, that's where people can't really predict anymore how fast it goes. Cause it's like for us, for example, you know, it takes like a year or so to like walk and I don't know, talk. And then you can like drive a car at 16 and then you're doing like brain surgery at 24 if you're like super smart, something like that, you know? But like for AI, that's all like a day. Like, you know, it's like, or whatever, it's a nanosecond. Like, and it's not just like that one, it's like all of them. So it's like, if one of us humans became a neurosurgeon, all of us now have the neurosurgery unlocked. So, so it's like, it's totally different. And so that's where it gets hard. Like when we get to that point, it could be that like, we just like leapfrog connected Hyperloop or whatever, and we just go straight to like teleportation or like multiple existences. I don't know. Like, you know, who knows? 3D printing, like there's a Xavier everywhere, like, you know, just infinite. Who knows?
That's like, I can't even wrap my head around that. That's insane.
So right now we're kind of in our current physics, we're limited by the speed of light as far as our speed limit. So at first I was thinking like, because I was always fascinated with space, but the distances are so vast, it seems like almost tragic. Like you'll never reach those things. And that seems almost like too cruel. Like there's got to be a way. It's just like teasing you, like, come to me, find me. And I thought maybe if you could travel as light. So if you digitized your consciousness and shot it like with light particles or energy, then it could go to another place where you could 3D print your body and like transfer kind of your thoughts. I was obviously there's probably loads of loopholes in there, but then I was talking to some folks, and I think I also saw a podcast, actually, an interview with a physicist who said something like, we need to invent a new or discover a new physics, like where the tools that we're using are antiquated or limited. And that just blew my mind because I thought like it was physics. I thought we had all of the physics. I didn't realize that this is just like one step, like there's multiple steps, and that the speed of light might be the speed limit in our existing model, but there's different things that we could do that exceed that. And then it's like, oh, okay, that's part of the game. Again, going back to entrepreneurship, that's, you know, solve the problem. So there's, you know, there's no limit, there's no end. Just keep iterating, keep finding solutions.
That's honestly, you got my mind going now. Like I'm going to start looking into all this stuff because it's just fascinating.
And it's right about journal time, I take it, because you're about 3 hours ahead of me. So right, you can journal that and unpack some of it. Well, Xavier, it's really cool talking to you. You have a really interesting background, you know, from your travel and your experiences at sea and your experiences in the Navy to entrepreneurship, trying to just build yourself a simple table and winding up becoming an entrepreneur with 7 acres of land, buying a movie theater, and who knows what's next. Thank you for sharing your experience with us and some of your perspective. I think we can all take that on board. Is there anything that you want to leave us with that we didn't get to touch on?
Really, I think at the end of the day, just I want to leave this with everybody. Just follow your heart. I feel like that's something I didn't do for so long. So just follow your heart and where it leads you. That's what you truly want. So just do that. Like block out society, block out everything else, because we're only here for one life and that's it. So follow your heart.
I like it. And where can people follow you?
So every social media platform, the Xavier DeArco, that's my follower. And then I have a newsletter that I write every week, comes out on Saturdays at 9 a.m. Xavier DeArco Beehive. It's in every single social media and the link. So write a newsletter about something that I love to talk about, whether it's flipping couches or, you know, writing about finance. So that'll be coming out every week. Great.
Well, thanks again. Best of luck out there.
Yeah, thank you so much, David, for having me. And I appreciate the conversation. I loved you sharing me your whole photography journey. And from the basics of it to where it is now, it's very enlightening, and it just kind of brings a new perspective to me from, what the world used to be and what it is now. So I appreciate all that.
My pleasure.